You've just finished reading chapters 25, section 1 and 2. So let's look at the social impact of the Industrial Revolution. This is a revolution that is going to have positive and negative effects on the world. First of all, one of the effects of the industrialization is urbanization. Urbanization means the growth of cities. We did this in the urban game with the villages that we began to create. Remember when we put all the trees, and then by the end we had cut down the trees and kept adding houses and factories and things. Well, this is urbanization. One thing to remember though, none of this industrial revolution could have happened unless we had learned to grow more food to feed a growing population with less people. And that is going to be the result of agricultural revolution. We're able to grow more food with less people. Some of the methods that help bring about the agricultural revolution is the use of fertilizer, the development of steel plows, the development of different breeding methods. Another thing that you wouldn't think about it is the enclosure movement. The enclosure movement begins in England, and what it is we take these farm areas. So we take a farm area, and what the farm area does is we've had areas where before, let's say this is the farm right here, we've had a farm, we've had public land, and then we've had smaller farms here. And these two farms could share this public land. Well, what happens is the king or the government sells this common land to the large landowner. He puts a fence around the farm, and now these small farmers can't use that land. The larger farmer is able to use more of the techniques. He's able to produce. Using the new techniques, he's able to produce more crops, puts these guys out of business. These small farmers have to find a new place. So what happens is these small farmers move to the cities, and they're going to go to the urban areas looking for work because they have lost their livelihood. At the same time, you're getting a creation of factories. People are building factories, and they take these new workers in. So remember, you have this population growth. The agricultural revolution grows more food. People have better nutrition, healthier lives. They're living longer, causing population to grow. The farmers also are not able to compete with the larger farmers. They are moving to the cities and into these factories, which are desperate for new labor. You also have transportation changing. No longer will it be the power of 2 feet walking or the boats using the sails. The steam engine had been invented, and what the steam engine does is they're going to take that steam engine that was used to power some of the factories, and they're going to put it on boats, making boats more powerful. They're going to create roads. They're also going to create railroads. Railroads are going to be a cheap form of transportation that is going to have some unique aspects. I mean, one thing to think about is to make a railroad, you got to put tracks down. You have to make those tracks strong. You're going to use iron and steel, which is going to increase production of iron and steel. You're going to see railroad trains are made out of steel. You're going to be needing more steel from steel mills, which is going to actually spur the growth of factories. To put down these tracks for these railroads, you're going to need workers. You're going to need workers to power the steam engine, to power the railroads, which is going to create thousands of jobs. So the railroads are going to play a very, very important role. Plus, they're going to link areas of natural resources with factories and with cities. And in larger countries, for example, the United States, they're going to be one of the reasons that it's able to grow so quickly. So, as with any revolution, you're going to have positive and negative effects. A lot of the negative effects with the Industrial Revolution are going to be the results of poor planning. You have a rapid growth of cities. People just moved into the cities. There was no rules put down about sanitation. For example, are we going to build a sewer? How are we going to get rid of the trash? There are no building codes. Nobody, if I need a building, they just put up a building. They didn't worry about putting in working sprinkler systems. They didn't worry about putting in even working bathrooms. How many bathrooms should we put in these buildings? No codes, no safety codes, no fire escapes. You also, when you're building these cities, you're not thinking about schools, you're not thinking about fire protection, you're not thinking about police protection, you're not thinking about garbage collection, you're not thinking about lighting, because they just didn't have time. So you have a large group of people coming together and there's no planning for it. It's out of control. So one of the things that is going to happen is your living conditions in the city are going to be poor. And as it is in the world today, you're going to have poor sections of the city and you're going to have nicer sections of the city. The poor sections of the city are going to be your working class sections. They're going to be where you're going to have your tenements, where you're going to have your slums, you're going to have overcrowding. You're going to have in these cities, because the buildings weren't being built fast enough, you're going to have apartments where people are going to be living in them. You know, an apartment built for 4 people may have 12 people living in it. Again, we talked about not having the drainage. So you're going to have diseases very easily spread, for example, cholera. You're going to have family life disrupted because you don't have, you have 12 people living in an apartment to make ends meet, and they're not all of the same family. Your middle and upper class, your upper class, usually and middle class are your factory owners, your bankers, your lawyers, your doctors. These are people who are not working with their hands. Some of your government officials, they're going to go to the nice suburban homes. They're going to go to the nicer areas of the city. And they are actually going to be living better than they were before. Standard of living is something that it's how people live compared to other people. So for example, the standard of living is going to raise. For example, if I was a farm girl, I might have 1 dress. But as a result of the Industrial Revolution, I'm able to afford 3 dresses. But I'm better off than I was in the rural area, but I'm still poor. And you can see some of these from these images about how tough life was for the working class. Again, that was just home. Working conditions, average workers. You're talking about 14-hour work days in factories that are not clean, have no safety requirements. The machines are dangerous. And folks, there's going to be a link on Blackboard showing you some of these conditions, especially in steel mills and coal milling. Coal mining was some of the toughest. Eventually, in England, for example, the Factory Act of 1819 is going to begin to restrict. They had things, child labor. It's going to limit the age. The bosses were the boss. They timed you when you went to work. Like, for example, if you had to leave the machine to go to the restroom, they timed you. Didn't put in the safety equipment. In the factory, you're facing heavy pollution, water, air, just noise pollution, no safety standards. Women and children, actually, it was easier for a woman and child in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution to get a job than it was for a man. Factory Act of 1819 is the beginning to change that, and eventually they will put in protections. Women, like I said, they're women and children. They're cheaper. Remember, the whole goal of the factory owner was to keep costs low so they could make high profits. Plus, I didn't have to pay these workers a lot of money, because if you didn't like what I was paying you, there were 3 more people ready to take that job. Factory mine and owners, like we said, Not only, like for example, if you're in the coal mines, you may be living on the owner's land, so you have to do as they say. So they're controlling the lives of the workers. And one of the things to remember is women, while they're working in the factories, they still have a responsibility for the home. So those are the negative effects. Were there positive effects? Well, of course there were. We had, one of the things is we have to remember our society is still industrialized today. You have jobs created. What you're going to find is, and you see it even the remnants today, those nations that industrialized become wealthier. So for example, if you look at why is Europe and the US a higher standard of living than Africa? The Industrial Revolution, increasing the development of technology, increasing the production of goods, which makes goods cheaper. And it's going to raise the standard of living, not just for the middle and upper class, but everyone. It will take time, but it will happen. People begin to develop, even though we talked about poor housing, you're going to see better housing. You're going to see people eating better. You're going to see cheaper goods. People can get sewing machines, radios, things that they could have never dreamed of. And what's also going to happen, especially as you get laws passed, is we're going to need more educated workers, so we're going to increase education availability for all, and when we move the children out of the factories, we got to find a place for them to go. Labor unions will be another organization that will help, because the working class is unsatisfied with their working conditions. So the workers will unite, and they will become a group that fights for laws, fights for better wages, fights for rights to help protect them and make work better for them. And also, out of this movement, you're going to have women get into the suffrage movement. And when you see the video, that will help you with this. Collective bargaining is something that still happens today. We hear a lot of it when you talk about the collective bargaining agreement in the NFL, basketball, hockey. It's when you have factory owners and workers work together to come up with what are the conditions we are going to work, what are our wages, what are our hours, things of that nature. And that was one of the ways that working conditions improved. If you did not reach a collective bargaining agreement, you went out on strike, and workers would refuse to work, which would cause management issues. What I'd like you to do, the last part of this, is you have, the first part is the T-chart, and I want you to create the positive and negative effects that you can think of, and then the last part is using this slide, underlying each short-term effect and long-term effect. And thank you.